Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that the entire world has changed. The country you fought for no longer exists. The war you dedicated your life to ended decades ago. Your enemies are no longer soldiers. Your commanders are gone. Your friends are dead. And yet, you still carry your rifle, you still hide in the jungle, you still believe your mission is not finished. Because in your mind, the war is still happening. This sounds like the plot of a movie, but it actually happened. For almost 30 years, one man continued fighting a war that the rest of the world had already forgotten. His name was Hiroo Onoda, a Japanese intelligence officer who disappeared into the jungles of a small Philippine island during World War II and would not surrender until 1974. His story is not only about war, it is about loyalty, about obedience, about the power of belief, and about one terrifying question. What happens when a person becomes completely convinced of something that is no longer true? In 1944, World War II was entering its final and most brutal stage. Japan was losing ground across the Pacific. American forces were advancing closer and closer toward Japanese territory. The Japanese military knew that traditional battles were becoming impossible, so they began preparing soldiers for another kind of warfare: guerrilla warfare. Instead of fighting large battles, small groups of soldiers would hide behind enemy lines. They would gather information, destroy supplies, attack whenever possible, and survive for as long as necessary. One of the soldiers chosen for this mission was a young Japanese officer named Hiroo Onoda. Born in 1922 in Wakayama, Japan, Onoda grew up in a society that placed enormous importance on discipline, loyalty, and duty. When he joined the Imperial Japanese Army, he was selected for special intelligence training. This was not ordinary military training. He learned how to survive alone, how to gather intelligence, how to sabotage enemy operations, and most importantly, how never to surrender. The idea was simple. A soldier could lose a battle. A soldier could lose a battlefield. But a soldier must never abandon his mission. This belief would shape the rest of Onoda's life. In December 1944, Onoda received his assignment. He was sent to Lubang Island in the Philippines. At first glance, Lubang seemed insignificant. It was a small tropical island covered with mountains and dense jungle. But strategically, it mattered. The island had an airstrip and could potentially be used by American forces. Onoda's mission was clear: destroy enemy facilities, gather intelligence, organize resistance, and continue fighting even if the main Japanese forces were defeated. Before sending him into the jungle, his commander gave him a final order: do not surrender. Do not take your own life. Wait for reinforcements, no matter how many years it takes. Continue the mission. For Onoda, these words were not just instructions. They became a promise that would control his entire future. But history was moving faster than anyone expected. Only months after Onoda arrived on Lubang Island, the situation collapsed. American forces captured the island. Japanese troops were defeated. Many soldiers were killed, others surrendered. But Onoda and 3 other Japanese soldiers escaped into the mountains. Deep inside the jungle, they began their new life. A life that was supposed to last a few months, maybe a few years, but nobody knew. It would continue for almost 3 decades. At the beginning, Onoda had no reason to believe the war was over. The jungle isolated them completely. There were no radios, no newspapers, no reliable communication. The outside world disappeared. Their entire reality became the forest around them. Every sound could be an enemy patrol. Every movement could be a military operation. Every piece of information from outside had to be treated as a possible trap. And this was where something important happened. The longer they stayed hidden, the stronger their belief became, because every day they survived was proof in their minds that their mission was still necessary. If the war was really over, why had nobody officially relieved them? If Japan had really lost, why were they still alive? To Onoda, the answer was simple. The enemy was trying to deceive them. Years passed. 1945 became 1946, then 1947, then 1950. The world was rebuilding. Cities destroyed by war were rising again. Families were returning home. New technology was changing everyday life. But inside the jungle of Lubang Island, time seemed frozen. Onoda and his companions continued their operations. They stole food from local farms. They collected supplies. They moved constantly through the forest. They avoided capture. They believed they were still soldiers behind enemy lines. They even discovered newspapers and messages claiming Japan had surrendered. But they refused to believe them. To them, these were enemy psychological tactics, a trick designed to make them leave their position. Then something happened that changed everything. One by one, the small group began disappearing. In 1950, one of Onoda's companions surrendered. Another was killed in 1954. The final remaining companion died in 1972. After almost 3 decades, Onoda was completely alone, a single soldier, living in the jungle, still fighting a war that had ended long before. But the strangest part was not that he survived. The strangest part was that he still believed he was doing the right thing, because from his perspective, he was not lost. He was not hiding. He was not refusing reality. He was simply following orders. And while the world had forgotten him, the people of Lubang Island had not. For local residents, the mysterious soldier in the jungle had become a frightening legend, a shadow moving through the trees, someone who appeared and disappeared without warning. The conflict that Onoda believed was part of a global war had become a completely different tragedy, a war between one man's belief and a world that had already moved on. For nearly 30 years, thousands of people searched for him. Leaflets were dropped, messages were sent, even letters from his own family were used to convince him. But nothing worked, because Onoda had learned one powerful survival skill: never trust information from the enemy. And now, the same belief that helped him survive was preventing him from accepting the truth. By the early 1970s, almost everyone believed Onoda would never be found. After all, how could anyone locate one person inside a huge tropical jungle? How could anyone convince a soldier that the war he was fighting had ended 29 years earlier? Then, in 1974, a young Japanese traveler decided to search for him. His name was Norio Suzuki. Unlike government officials and military investigators before him, Suzuki was not looking for a military victory. He simply wanted to find the legendary soldier who had disappeared into history. And somehow, against all expectations, he succeeded. Deep inside the jungle of Lubang Island, he found Hiroo Onoda, the soldier who had been fighting World War II long after World War II was over. But finding him was only the beginning, because Onoda still refused to surrender. The commander who gave him the original order was the only person who could end his war. In early 1974, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi was asked to return to Lubang Island. But the man who had once been a powerful Japanese military officer was no longer a soldier. The empire he served had disappeared. The army he belonged to no longer existed. The world had completely changed. Taniguchi was now working quietly as a bookseller in Japan. But decades earlier, he was the person who sent Hiroo Onoda into the jungle. And now, he was the only person who could bring him back. When Taniguchi arrived on Lubang Island, he carried no weapons, no military equipment, no orders for battle. He came with something much more important: the truth. Deep inside the jungle, Onoda finally stood face to face with the commander he had been waiting for. The two men had not seen each other for almost 30 years. During that time, the world had changed beyond recognition. But for Onoda, this moment was still connected to 1944. He was still the soldier who had received his mission, and now he was finally waiting for the final instruction. Taniguchi delivered the order. The mission was canceled. All military operations were to stop. Onoda was officially released from his duties. After hearing those words, the longest battle of his life finally ended. Not with an explosion, not with a final battle, not with victory or defeat, but with a simple command. A command he had been waiting for almost 3 decades. Onoda then did something that surprised many people. He did not argue. He did not run. He did not try to continue fighting. He immediately followed the order. He handed over his rifle, the same rifle he had carried through the jungle for 29 years. He handed over his ammunition, his sword, and the equipment that represented his entire life. For the first time since 1944, Hiroo Onoda was no longer a soldier on a mission. He was simply a man returning home. But returning home was not as simple as leaving the jungle, because while Onoda had been frozen in time, the world had continued moving. The Japan he returned to was completely different from the country he had left. The streets were modern. The economy was growing. Young people listened to different music. People had different dreams. The old military culture that shaped his childhood had disappeared. Onoda had survived the jungle, but now he faced another challenge: learning how to live in peace. When his story became public, people around the world were fascinated. Many admired him. They saw a man with unbelievable determination, someone who survived impossible conditions, someone who refused to give up. For nearly 30 years, he lived with almost no comfort, no modern medicine, no electricity, no connection to society, only his mission, his discipline, and his belief. From a survival perspective, what he achieved was extraordinary. But the story was also complicated, because while Onoda believed he was still fighting a war, other people were affected by his actions. The people living on Lubang Island did not experience his actions as a historical mystery. For them, the conflict was real. There were people injured. There were lives lost. There were families who suffered because one soldier continued a war that had already ended. This created a difficult question. Can loyalty become dangerous? Can obedience become harmful? And when does dedication become something else? Perhaps the most fascinating part of Onoda's story is that he was not simply trapped by the jungle. He was trapped by meaning. Every morning he woke up with a purpose. Every day had a reason. Every danger he faced had an explanation. His suffering was not random. In his mind, he was protecting his country. He was fulfilling his duty, and that belief gave him the strength to survive. Psychologists have studied similar situations throughout history. Human beings are capable of enduring incredible hardship when they believe their actions have meaning. A person can survive hunger, isolation, fear, and uncertainty when they believe there is a reason to continue. Meaning can become a source of incredible strength. But there is another side. The same belief that gives people strength can also prevent them from seeing reality. Onoda's story shows one of the most powerful abilities of the human mind, the ability to create a world that makes sense. Inside the jungle, every piece of information was interpreted through one belief: the war is still happening. A newspaper saying Japan surrendered? Enemy propaganda? A letter from family? A possible trick? A search team asking him to return? A psychological operation? Everything was filtered through the belief he already had. And this raises a question that is still relevant today. How often do humans do the same thing? How often do we reject information that challenges what we already believe? After returning to Japan, Onoda struggled to find his place. The attention was overwhelming. Some people called him a hero. Others criticized him. Some saw him as a symbol of discipline. Others saw him as a reminder of the dangers of extreme nationalism. The truth was somewhere in between. He was a remarkable survivor, but he was also a human being shaped by his time. Eventually, Onoda decided to leave Japan. He moved to Brazil and started a completely different life. Far away from war, far away from politics, far away from the jungle. He became a farmer. The man who once spent decades hiding from enemies now spent his days caring for the land, growing crops, raising animals, living a quiet life. Later, Onoda dedicated himself to teaching younger generations. He created an outdoor education program where children learned survival skills, responsibility, and discipline. But his message was no longer about war. It was about life. He wanted young people to understand the importance of commitment, the importance of patience, and the importance of having a purpose. Hiroo Onoda passed away in 2014 at the age of 91. His life remains one of the strangest stories in modern history. A soldier who continued fighting for 29 years. A man who survived where almost nobody could. A person who showed both the incredible power and the danger of human belief. Because Onoda's story is not only about a forgotten war, it is about something much closer to all of us. Every person carries invisible battles, beliefs, promises, ideas about who we are. Sometimes these beliefs help us move forward. They give us courage. They help us survive difficult moments. But sometimes, they become the walls that keep us trapped. The greatest lesson from Hiroo Onoda's life may not be about never giving up, because persistence alone is not always enough. Sometimes courage means continuing. But sometimes, courage means changing direction. Sometimes, the hardest thing is not fighting the battle. It is accepting that the battle has already ended. For 29 years, Hiroo Onoda waited for someone to tell him the war was over. But perhaps, in the end, the final battle was never against an enemy. It was against the human mind. The ability to believe, the ability to survive, and the ability to finally accept a new reality. This was the story of the soldier who kept fighting for 29 years. A story about war, a story about loyalty, and most importantly, a story about what it means to be human. Thank you for watching Enigma Files. If you enjoy stories about unbelievable moments in history, survival, and the mysteries of human nature, subscribe for more.